Hello, everyone. So I think we are live. A huge thank you to everyone that is joining us now from all around the world. This is day 2 of our Christmas Bonanza live stream. A huge thank you to everyone that has joined us so far. We've had a great turnout of content. This is our final panel discussion of the day. And now we're focusing on the Latin America region and crypto growth in the space. First off, to everyone that has taken part in our Christmas giveaway so far, a huge thank you. We have gained an incredible amount of subscribers so far. Good luck to everyone that has taken part in the competition. There is still time to do so until the 25th of December to take part and potentially win some Christmas prizes. So head over to coinmarketcap.com/Christmas to make sure that you don't miss out. Now, I would love to turn over and introduce our guest for the conversation for today. So we have Sebastian Serrano, CEO of Repo App, Ryan Taylor, CEO of Dash, and we also have Demelza Hayes, Head of Research at Cointelegraph. So guys, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you for having us on.
Yeah.
Absolute pleasure. It's great to have you guys on board. Now, a really exciting time taking a look at the Latin America region. And I think one element that I'd like to start with, and Sebastian, I'd actually like to turn to you first of all. When it comes to demographic in 2021, for me, Latin America has always been a fantastic use case for cryptocurrency adoption. 2021, how has it fared compared to other regions and in your perception, expectations of the region?
Yeah, many of the countries in Latin America have challenging economies, and the last 2 years have been extremely challenging. Our main two countries are Argentina and Brazil. At Ripio, we have right now 2.7 million users, and so these are the two populations that I know the most because of our user base. And in Argentina, the economy has been so challenging that we have the widest user base. Like we have like around the world, like a strong user base in 25, 35 years old. But what we're finding in Argentina is that we have very good conversion rates and a lot of people joining and starting to use crypto even in their 60s, and there is a massive adoption in a wide spread, and I think it's one of the countries that has the strongest population using cryptocurrencies and very well educated, mostly because the population is looking for security. It's like trying to find ways to protect themselves, which is kind of like different to the users of crypto around the world that are more seeking opportunity, which they're attracted by volatility and the roller coaster. In Argentina, it's a particular population. Stablecoins are extremely popular. Bitcoin too. Bitcoin is still the most traded currency, but that's a particular set of conditions. Brazil is a little bit more like global markets. There is a lot more traders. There is a lot more speculation. People is joining more for the opportunity and seeking opportunity, and we have a younger user base in Brazil and less wider, more male base than what we see in Argentina. But the last 18 months has been of extreme growth. To give a sense, like before COVID, we have 400,000 users. So we grew exponentially the last year and a half. And right now we're signing up between 10,000, 30,000 users per day. So it's a moment of mass adoption.
Really interesting, and thank you for your insights there. Now, Ryan, I'd like to turn to you because if you Google Dash has had some adoption, not just in Latin America, but also recently in the US as well. So Dash has been growing. But from that, I'd like to get you to look at how cryptocurrency adoption in the region has grown. I know Dash started off very strong in Venezuela a few years ago, but how has that really expanded into other regions and potentially new to age demographics? And has there been any challenges in 2021 that you've maybe encountered as an organization?
Yeah, so Dash has a long history of investing in Latin America and Venezuela in particular, but that's beginning to broaden a bit. We initially focused a lot of our attention on Venezuela because of the high inflation rate, the hyperinflation rate that they continue to undergo there. And the hypothesis being that, cryptocurrencies would gain the most adoption in places that were experiencing that type of turmoil. And we have experienced a willingness to use cryptocurrency as a form of money, as a form of payment. And we've seen significant growth from our partners there. So, I think that Venezuela is kind of a unique location in the world, just given the high levels of inflation. But if you look across Latin America, there is a history of periods of high inflation in most of those countries. And there's recent memory of those events. They seem to happen every 20 years or so in a given country, a period of hyperinflation. And so there's a lot more willingness to consider cryptocurrencies in Latin America compared to a lot of regions. And when you look at payments in particular, there's a lot of willingness to try new payment types. In the US, we just pull our credit cards out and we pay. But in Brazil in particular, it is a real conscious decision that needs to be made about how you're going to pay at a given merchant, because it's not just credit cards or debit cards. There's payment vouchers, there's like lunch vouchers, there's alternative payment networks. A lot of places only take cash. So if you look at the counter at a lot of these places in Brazil, they might have 8 or 9 different point of sale terminals for different types of devices or payment methods. So what we find is that when paying is a conscious decision, there's more openness to considering other payment types. As Sebastian alluded to, this is a region where people are seeking stability as well. And so when we look at the adoption of various cryptocurrencies in the different countries, oftentimes near or at the top of the list are, stablecoins like Tether or Binance USD. And so they're actually seeking to adopt and use it as a payment method. But when you really dig into it, you start to realize that there are different use cases and different ways that the different coins get used. Just as an example, in Venezuela, Dash actually leads Bitcoin and stablecoins as the most used cryptocurrency at the point of sale. And that's because of its speed and low cost. And in fact, when you look within different categories of merchants, the everyday purchases, the things like pharmacies and grocery stores, Dash is even more used in those environments. When you look at online purchases, like paying your bill for your satellite dish or whatever, that tends to see a higher ratio of coins like Litecoin. And Bitcoin is used less frequently, but a lot for larger purchases. And so people understand how these different coins compete and how they're useful and what they're good for. And they do differentiate when they're making their choices as to how to transact. And they vary a lot market to market. People talk about Latin America like it's one thing, right? But the behavior in Brazil is very different than the behavior in Venezuela. And there are a lot of factors that go into that. How many merchants can I use this at? How stable is it? Am I speculating, or am I, on price, or am I actually using this to pay for goods or services? And so these markets are extremely different, and they sometimes get lumped together. And we're finding that we have to compete in different ways in different countries. And so in Brazil, we're focusing a lot more on being on all the trading platforms, and that having, access to all of the platforms through which people make investments is a lot more important than it is in, say, Venezuela. And being on super apps where, users can do a number of different things with those apps is more important in Brazil than it is in Venezuela. And so these really are very different markets, and they need to be approached in very different ways. And it takes a lot of learning in order to figure out what works within each country.
And that's a really good point, that there is no real cookie cutter approach when it comes to progressing and gaining adoption in some very different regions with different mannerisms and different user goals and orientation. And I know, Demelza, you'll probably know this better than all of us as Director of Research for Cointelegraph. You'll probably be able to see just from site demographics what areas of interest local users have across different regions. So I want to turn to you now and ask, we saw the Venezuelan government working with congressmen for crypto asset regulations to move forward with this digital economy. We also saw in Brazil the first Bitcoin ETF. Have you noticed a correlation between these large, significant movements across the year and then also an interest in new users or site visits across Cointelegraph?
Definitely. So the Spanish part of Cointelegraph is our second largest media after the English one. So the English one's getting about 1 million views per day. And the Spanish one actually had its largest record for monthly visits in October, and that was over 5 million. So they're also getting, a lot of coverage on a daily basis. And I think when we spoke a couple of years ago, the main part of that growth was in Mexico. But actually, we are seeing a lot of other countries coming onto our radar in terms of viewership. And we also have the Portuguese Cointelegraph, which is for Brazil. So we're getting a lot of traction as well for Portuguese, which I think is maybe the third or fourth largest after, I think it's the fourth after Korea. So yeah, we have a lot of coverage there. And interestingly, I hear both of you saying that kind of, in the hyperinflation countries, people are more interested in the security instead of the opportunity, as you mentioned, Sebastian. And I think that makes sense to me. I would want to save my wealth over time. But actually, the most viewed article for Cointelegraph Español was one on metaverses. So we actually had over 250,000 views of our article last week on the drop in the price of crypto mines, which is a metaverse token. And that actually dropped from $800 US to $4 and lost 99% of its value. And that was actually the most viewed article, that we've had all year for Cointelegraph Español. So I think that there is still a lot of speculation. There's a lot of people coming online in LatAm to speculate.
Yeah, as a small comment there, South America has a strong history with the metaverse. Even the founders of Decentraland are Argentinians. So it has a big community. It's a big topic. And gaming is also a big topic in South America.
And this is a really interesting point, and Demelza, thank you for sharing that. And we do have a lot of our people that are interacting in the chat, and I do want to encourage anyone that is watching us live now, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them. We have 3 great esteemed experts now that will be very willing to answer any questions that you do have. But Sebastian, you've raised a really good point there when it comes to, we previously earlier on today hosted a panel on play to earn across Asia. And Latin America, how has that been when it comes to incorporating play to earn? Because something that we've seen in Europe is we haven't seen so many demographics, but compared to how Latin America embraced cryptocurrencies in 2017, I would expect 2021 them to be embracing play to earn almost on a similar par. And I'd love to know your thoughts on this and if we're heading that direction.
Yeah, it varies country by country, but it's amazing the adoption and traction that is having play to earn and crypto games in Brazil in particular. If you look at the media around Axie Infinity, like they talk like it's all around Philippines, but their second country is Brazil, like by views and active users. You can see people playing Axie Infinity everywhere. And these are countries that have large segments of the population that are in need and they can make a living through playing games. So we see a lot of adoption of especially Axie Infinity and crypto games. I'm in Sao Paulo right now, and like most conversations, even random ones, have touched crypto gaming, and even on our platform, like Axie Infinity is like many weeks have been like the second fair traded token in our platform. So it has a lot of traction, and I think this is something that is gonna start growing across the rest of Latin America, but Brazil is showing like incredible demand and hit a chord in the population.
Fantastic points. And just to go back to something Demelza mentioned there, because you did touch on one of the highest viewed articles actually being to do with a metaverse, but the metaverse did lose 99% of value. So I think this is a question open to the floor and anyone is welcome to answer. With new technology, as we know, there does come risks, user protection in 2021 when it comes to regulation, when it comes to kind of the social responsibility that exchanges and trading platforms take upon themselves, even media outlets. What have been some of the biggest challenges for users across the region?
Like I think we are in a period of a strong experimentation, and that like is kind of like the Precambric of life. I think if you go into Etherscan, there is 500,000 tokens created so far. So there is a lot of experimentation, a lot of try and error. So many projects are not going to be successful. I do think like I'm not sure like if like the regulation is the right answer. I think like we work a lot on education and in creating content and covering risks and understanding. I think empowering the user is the right answer, is the first answer. There's gonna be a lot of regulation. I think it does gonna bring safety for the users, especially for platforms like us that provide custody. There is a lot of development in that area. Like Brazil is working on a law for cryptocurrencies. In Argentina, there are two. Paraguay just created one, especially for mining, because mining is very strong in Paraguay. There is another one. There is a draft in Uruguay. So there is a lot of coming regulation and discussion in politics, and but I do think that education and creating knowledge around everything around this industry, and the more that we can give tools to the users to make informed decisions, the better will be the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, for Dash Core Group, we produce open source software, but we don't actually custody any funds. So we don't have any direct, responsibility for any of the custodial related regulations, but a lot of our partners obviously do. things like exchanges and money services businesses and things that we work with. It is clear that regulators are starting to pay attention to this space. I don't think in the same way that they are in the United States and in Europe, but they are starting to pay attention to the crypto space and what they ought to be doing. I think for a lot of them, they're looking to other countries as guides for what regulations need to be put in place. And so I think they're just a little more willing to allow things to continue to progress in this experimentation stage that we're in. So I think that's good, and I think that is helpful for the adoption in these countries. That said, at Dashboard Group, we take we take it very seriously that users are custodying their funds in our software. And when a user is signing up, we took pains to make sure that they understand that the crypto is residing on their device and what it takes to protect themselves and so on. We prevent them from, say, taking a screenshot of their passphrase. And then we say, no, you can't do that. You have to actually write it down. And so, it's always a trade-off, and there's some tension there between usability and making sure that our users are secure, but we take the security portion of that very seriously. And then we also support our users. So we have a help desk that they can email and say, hey, I'm having difficulty with my wallet or whatever. Can you help me figure out how to recover? And so, so we do take those aspects seriously, but I think the heavy lifting is going to be done by the exchanges and money services businesses that people interact with. And there, I think there's still a lot of gray area that needs to be filled. But I think that Latin American countries in general are taking a more cautious approach to not over-regulate in this space. And then the last piece is, you think about risks probably differently than a lot of people that are users of cryptocurrency think about risks, because they're solving for a different set of risks than you can even contemplate when you're not in that country and experiencing what they're experiencing. Those include geopolitical risks. Countries like Ukraine see high adoption rate. It's not because they necessarily are experiencing inflation. It's because they're worried about a potential invasion and that they may need to flee their homes with whatever they can take with them. And so, they're facing those types of risks. They're facing inflation risks. They're facing infrastructure risks. The traditional payment system doesn't always work. So how do I know that I'm not going to spend my day going into town to buy something and the power is out and I can't transact other than with my mobile device? So, it's not all incremental risk. It's also solving other risks that these people face on a day-to-day basis. Probably a lot of Axie Infinity users, frankly, are, where's my next meal coming from? And, how am I going to develop an income today, especially in a pandemic? So, I think that it's solving for a lot of risks too. And I think that's part of the mentality of this stuff isn't just risky, it's resolving risks for us as individuals. So I think it's just a different paradigm than we're used to thinking about risk. It's not just the investment risk or whatever. It's all these other risks that they face as part of their day-to-day.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Yes, you go ahead, please.
As a comment to that, I myself lived like 3 major economical crises where the peso, I grew up in the south of Argentina, and I was a young kid, and my dad, I went with my dad to buy dollars in 89, which was the first hyperinflation that I saw. I have some pesos that I saved from money that my father gave me, and I went to buy dollars for the first time. And then like weeks later, like dollar went to the roof, and I thought I made money. And I told my father, "Wow, I made money." And he said, "You make no money. Like you just you're gonna buy the same things that were going to be able to buy." And that was my first experience to see inflation from a very young age. And then when I was in college, it happened again. And it happened again in recent years. And we are now having again in Argentina very high inflation, which is over 45% officially. And the region is, even Brazil, that is a more stable country, is having 10% inflation. So these are all things that people is more open to and seeking for solutions, and more used to think in these terms. Like I think like in developed countries, as they have not experienced high inflation or major economic crises in the recent history. Even the 2008 crisis wasn't that bad compared to things that a country under development sees. That makes the population like more open to explore things and more aware of like systemic risks and the need of on how to solve them.
And you've made a really excellent point there. And I do want to turn now to El Salvador as a use case this year. Every person involved in cryptocurrency did have their eyes on the region and the fact that they'd adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. And I think among the cryptocurrency community, it was seen as very positive news. However, there were some reports coming through regarding regional protests. And Demelza, I'd actually like to address this question to you when it comes to the consensus. As you guys have mentioned, it's very hard when you're not in the location geographically and you're not on the ground to get a user consensus. But from your insights and just what you'd experienced with site demographics and comments in the chat, how did you view the El Salvador news? And did you view it as something which was inquisitive on the region, or was there any challenges that you've noticed? And do you think it will change smaller regions that may be looking to almost copy El Salvador's moving forward? Will they do things differently, you think?
Sure. Well, I think, as you said, there's been a couple problems with different Bitcoin wallets and onboarding people in the country, and it's a huge learning curve for a lot of people. But overall, I think this is a huge step forward for cryptocurrency, because now we have governments coming out and saying we are going to be using cryptocurrency, and they are saying that, we can use dollars, we can use cryptocurrencies, we can use our own local currencies, but we're going to let people choose. And I think that taking the money away from the state and separating that role is really important for giving responsibility back to the individual, so that the individual has to choose and consider all the different risks associated with the money that they hold. And so one of the first things that happened when that announcement came was Nestle Foundation and Nestle Corporation, which is a Swiss, water producer and chocolate manufacturer and everything. They have a large a part of their business in Latin America, El Salvador, Panama, Honduras, Nicaragua, and they sell water to grocery stores, billions of dollars worth per year. And they reached out to me actually and said, we have to now, like by law in El Salvador, the grocery stores have to be able to pay for our water in Bitcoin. And we have to actually learn how to accept Bitcoin, because they're legally allowed to now pay us with Bitcoin. And we have no idea how to accept Bitcoin. And they said, we need to know, how can we, as a corporation this large, doing billions of dollars worth of trade, how can we integrate this into our network, our payment systems? And I looked for a while. I said, well, I need to find a guide online to help you find the right people in Latin America that can help with processing these payments. And actually, there weren't any good guides, because there's all sorts of different. Each region has its own laws regarding money transmission if you need licenses to hold funds, if you need licenses to process exchange rates between different, exchange between different currencies. And, in the end, we ended up having to actually write a new report for them, just so that we could research all the different parties in LatAm that are offering that service and what questions to ask when, starting to accept payments as a merchant. So I think that, overall, going back to Dash, I'm not sure that Bitcoin's going to get that much use in El Salvador for daily payments, because the transaction fees are, I don't know, what are they, $20 right now or something? They're pretty high. So I'm not sure, how the average person can really use Bitcoin. But I think that this is a good step forward. Bitcoin kind of makes the first step, and then that opens up the door. Bitcoin's the gateway drug to all the other cryptocurrencies, and letting people choose other coins, that have lower transaction fees.
They integrated like the wallets with Lightning Network. So
Lightning,
they do have,
Lightning is the predominant method at point of sale. However, it is not 100% reliable. And so I think that, we attended the LatAm Bitcoin conference there a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago or so. And the payment systems are not high cost, because they do tend to have Lightning Network integrated into the ATMs and into the point of sale. But some of those transactions are taking a long time or are failing altogether. And it's not a high percentage, but it's high enough where people are aware that it's not reliable. So it's probably less than 5% of transactions, but if you do 10 of them over the course of a day or something like that, there's a good chance you're going to have an issue at some point.
I never experienced one issue with Lightning Network, but maybe I've been lucky.
And it may have to do with the specific implementations in El Salvador, because I know that they had a lot more issues in the beginning than they're having today. I know there's a lot of people trying to work to resolve those, but some of the platforms that are in El Salvador, to your point, Demelza, are incorporating other coins. And so what's exciting about all of this is it's not just fiat is having some alternative. It's that we're entering into a world in which users have choice, and there is competitive currencies coming to play at the same table, and it's user choice at this point. This is a exciting era because people have never really had much of a choice. In some countries, the dollar, circulated in large enough numbers where you could choose to attempt to use dollars. But this is the first time where it's truly competitive market dynamics that are going to determine the winner. And I think that's what's really exciting about all of this. And I think, Bitcoin in El Salvador is just the beginning of it. It's just the beginning for El Salvador, and it's just the beginning for cryptocurrencies throughout Latin America.
I think historically,
you have raised some really interesting points there. We do actually have some questions from the audience, and maybe that will help you with some of your points as well. So maybe Sebastian, and we'll turn to you for the first one, because based on what you just said there, Ryan, someone has asked if stable coins would be more suitable for payments in Latin America for users and merchants, just based on the volatility of cryptocurrencies. So maybe Sebastian, that would be something that I'd like to direct to you and just get your insights on.
Yeah. To finish the previous thing, I think historically, what we saw with El Salvador is that crypto started with retail and with people holding cryptocurrency. Last year, we starting to see corporations starting to own crypto, and El Salvador is the first country. So it's kind of like a progression into the world adoption. And to the question, it depends on the country. I think like in places like Argentina, where people is very aware of the exchange rates of dollars, stablecoins are already very popular and will continue to be popular and grow in popularity. In other countries, the population is less aware. Like for example, if you ask a Brazilian what is the exchange rate to the dollar, they're less aware about how much is the exchange rate of a dollar to the real, and they're more aware of how things value in reals. And I think that is that the exchange rates and the different values of currencies is something that we can solve, like through technology and through real-time pricing. We are currently launching a debit card in Brazil that you can associate with any of your balances in crypto. So you can go into a store and pay with a card, and that card is going to be associated with the balance that you choose. So you could be spending Bitcoin, ETH, or any stable coin. And I think there are ways that we will develop that will solve that issue. We can make systems that do real-time quoting, and I think that's the way. And to what Ryan said, I think like the beauty of this is that we're giving choice, and I think like a big part of the ethos of crypto is freedom and liberty, and we should strive for more of that. And my main concern with the previous point with El Salvador is that I'm not sure, I don't think it goes with the ethos of crypto to make it forced by law to have to accept it. That's the thing that makes more noise to me, and why where we are all on this, and the moral background that we have, I think. And I think a lot of the challenges of crypto going forward, many of them are going to be battles on morality and on our ethos. And I think we have to hold a strong freedom and choice, which is a big part of why we are here, I think.
Absolutely. And now some final words from each of you before we do wrap up. So we do have a really large demographic across Latin America. And I know we've commented on a range of different trends throughout 2021, from metaverse and play to earn, all the way through to different coins and potentially the stable coin versus Bitcoin, big debate that people are having. So I'll start with Demelza and work our way around. And just looking at any predictions you have for 2022 when it comes to consistent trends across LatAm, maybe in specific regions, or something that you're expecting to see more of that hasn't really come into fruition yet, but is something which is certainly in motion.
Definitely. Well, I do think that more countries are going to go in the direction that El Salvador has gone. So I think even potentially Panama. I mean, it depends on how each of those political situations evolve, but I do think that more countries will come online and even start to use some of their own money to buy Bitcoin and to, I think there's all sorts of different avenues that they could do, even give back money to their own citizens, if Bitcoin appreciates or their cryptocurrency does. And I think that it gives them more power, over their own economy versus relying on what the United States is doing all of the time. So I think it's a great move forward, and I'm looking forward to Cointelegraph Espanol continuing to increase their readership and doing metaverse and Decentraland and NFTs and also stablecoins and buying volatile cryptocurrencies as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. Ryan, what about you?
Well, I think that 2021 saw pretty rapid growth in at least the markets we were in, not just for Dash, but for cryptocurrencies in general. And that's approaching triple-digit growth rates for a lot of the platforms that we are partnered with and have access to some of their usage data and so on. And so we know that the adoption curve is quite strong. And there's these catalysts that, Demelza just talked about, that there's just a great deal of interest and a great deal of interest on the part of countries, on the part of consumers, on the part of businesses. And this is very different than past bull markets in that regard. And it makes it look like this is a very sustainable set of changes and growth that could allow it to continue for a very long time. And people think that, hey, we're in this speculative bubble or whatever. But if you look at other digital payment methods like or digital platforms, they can experience growth for very, very long periods of time. Visa and MasterCard both grew at double-digit percentages from the 1960s until today, and they continue to grow. You look at, Google or Facebook or any of these that experience exponential growth that extends way beyond any period you could possibly imagine. And we could be at the very beginning of that. And that's what makes this so exciting, is I think we're finally starting to see the signs of actual adoption, not just a bunch of speculators coming in, but people using it. And a lot of these numbers are at scale when you're talking about entire countries. And so I'm really excited to see what 2021 leads to in 2022, because I think we're at a really exciting juncture.
Awesome. And Sebastian, I'd love to end with you now when it comes to some of the trends that you're picking up as well, and some of the things that you're identifying for next year.
Yeah, I think in some countries, we're getting into some levels of critical mass that will lead to some use cases that were not scalable or just feasible before, like payments, for example. Like we are getting into amounts of the population that have crypto that make them feasible. I think that is likely to start to happen. And because we are starting to solve scalability, it's technically it's not yet there, but it's coming. And the other thing that I think, like we mentioned several trends and use cases that started to pick up and grow during 2021, like play to earn and stablecoins. But I think that the one that is about to start to pick up in Latin America, I think, is crypto art that has not yet picked up, like the NFT. And we see a lot of development on projects around art and NFTs and music that are just starting, but they are starting to gather like massive artists. So I think that's going to be a trend of 2022 that has not yet begun. But to complement to what Ryan says, that we're seeing use cases now. We're seeing a lot of use cases. It's just not just money, or like we have like many use cases building up. And I think that before, many people were looking for a killer app or like a killer use case for crypto and blockchain. But I think what we're realizing this year and what is coming is that there are many use cases. There are a lot of use cases, and this is a very general platform. It's going to be a strong platform for humanity to store digital ownership, to make payments, to interact and to collaborate. And I think that's the most exciting thing.
It certainly is such an exciting time. And Demelza, I know we normally typically do interviews every 18 months, and I can't imagine to see what's in play 18 months from now. We'll have to make them more frequent for sure. But Ryan, Sebastian, Demelza, thank you all so much for your insights. It was great to catch up. I really enjoyed hearing each and every one of you and your valuable thoughts on the industry and how it's growing. Seems like a really optimistic time. Thank you so much to everyone that's been watching as well. Really appreciate all the questions that you have asked through. And just a reminder, there is still time to take part in our Christmas giveaway. So make sure you head over. I'm going to leave the link in the description, but it's coinmarketcap.com/Christmas. Hope to see you all there. Guys, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to join the panel. Happy holidays and see you all again very soon.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.